Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Stupid brat, Naruto muttered under his breath, glancing at Ryo, who was laughing while riding piggyback on Naga's shoulders. The little girl had escaped his palanquin shortly after they had started off, leading to yet another chase. Finally it was decided, despite the protests of her maid, that it would be better if someone just carried her. Sighing, Naruto shook his head, forcing himself to forget about the two and turn his attention to the world around him. For a mission there really was not much of a difference from just wandering around the woods in Konoha, well minus having Anko actively hunting him. It was almost like a picnic except for that annoying brat that kept turning around to stick a tongue out at him. Grumbling, Naruto narrowed his eyes and darted past the samurai, moving into travel beside the ambassador himself. At least Anko was not going to skin him alive just for that. All this walking is pretty tiring, isn't it? Blinking, he looked at the man again, who was smiling faintly. Did you know this entire area was a battlefield about 50 years ago? No, Naruto offered blankly, wondering why the man would just start talking for no apparent reason. Really, I would have thought they would have taught the grass fire conflict in the academy. Hee, I slept most of the time. Naruto responded, scratching the back of his head. That was the first war to end with a non-aggression treaty between countries, so it was the first time that a shinobi village was not crushed. Tashi said breezily, glancing at Naruto. I have been meaning to ask, but what clan do you belong to? Meh, clans are overrated. Naruto muttered. Oh, Tashi said, sounding uncomfortable now. Well, what are you going to do when you're older? I'm going to be Hokage. Naruto said proudly. Really? Tashi looked at him appraisingly, then shrugged, going to a different subject. So is there anything you'd like to talk about? Naruto blinked. I like talking on these type of trips. Tashi answered, grinning. Part of why I am so good at my job. Well, I've been wondering, why is the daimyo's daughter coming along? Naruto asked, giving the man an odd look. She is part of a diplomatic exchange. Tashi answered with a sigh. The only way to ensure that grass will sign and follow the new non-aggression treaty is to exchange the fire daimyo's beloved daughter for one of the grass daimyo's son. That's horrible. Naruto said, eyes wide in disbelief. How could anyone do that? What kind of father would do that? Naruto questioned loudly. A father that is determined to keep peace between the nations. Tashi answered calmly. Our military strength is unmatched, with only wind and earth close enough to cause us problems. Sadly, we are an isolationist country while the other countries have made interlocking alliances. But Waterfall, Naga, who had hurried to catch up to Naruto, started to say only stop when the ambassador glanced at him. Waterfall is our only real ally. We rely on non-aggression treaties with the others, and the only way to ensure they are worth more than the paper they're written on is diplomatic exchange. Well, that and the Great Wall of High no Kuni. But she's just a child. Naruto protested. This was not right. How could anyone think that using children as pawns was right? Isn't there another way? Naruto asked, his voice edged with his emotions. We could try to conquer the world. Tashi offered blandly, glancing at him. We are not lightning, however, so we prefer non-aggression treaties. It's still not right. Naruto muttered, voice sounding almost scary. Oh, I agree. Tashi said lightly. Sadly, like you shinobi, Ryo and myself are merely tools for a greater good. Naruto frowned, slowing down. This whole situation did not sit well with him. Plus, he did not like the idea of people being reduced to mere tools, especially him. Glancing at Tashi, Naruto scowled and continued on in silence. The little entourage surrounding the ambassador and Ryo reached one of the numerous gates of the massive Great Wall at noon, where their progress slowed to a crawl. Anko had always hated this part of missions outside Fire Country. It took forever to get through the various checkpoints and everybody was so damn formal. Glancing at Naruto, she smirked, seeing his obvious annoyance at their slow progress. There was something to be said for having a student with a personality like his. Turning her attention back to the wall, she noted the sharp upswing in the number of fire samurai guarding the gate. Thank the gods she did not have to go through more than one of these. Leading the group of samurai and the lone other ninja to the gate guards, Anko smiled faintly, putting the samurai guards on edge. Apparently her reputation was known even among them. That made her smile just a bit more. Stopping just short of the towering wall, she glanced up at the distant watchtowers which were manned by squads of samurai, then turned back as the captain of the samurai came toward her. Unconcerned, Anko fished in her pocket and then producing the required papers handed it over, whistling as she motioned for Naruto to join her. The blonde, shooting a dark glare at Ryo, darted up to join her side. He did not say anything and Anko did nothing to acknowledge his presence. The captain glanced at them briefly, checked the papers and then started toward the samurai. Geez, come on, can't we just go over the wall or something? Naruto whined, crossing his arms. 20 minutes later as they watched, the caption continued checking the samurai against the list. If we were alone then yay, but we're not, and besides there are too many samurai around. Anko said conversationally. The Fire Country has roughly 340,000 samurai, a large portion of which patrol these walls. But, we could get past them, right? They're just samurai. Naruto grumbled. Moron. Anko muttered, crossing her own arms. The captains and commanders are failed genin. Even those born into the life of a samurai have some experience with using and detecting chakra. The elite samurai that guard the daimyo are even former jonin. Failed genin. Naruto said blankly. I thought when you failed you were sent back to the academy. Nah, that'd be a waste of talent. Those that fail are shunted off into samurai training, along with those that fail the smaller academies in various Fire Nation villages. Anko glanced at him, noting his confusion. Now you know why Fire Country has such an overwhelming military power. Our samurai can mold and use chakra and our ninja are better trained than everybody else. Naruto muttered something and Anko laughed before heading toward Tashi, who was talking with the samurai captain. They went quiet at her approach and she made a mental note at that, even though she pretended she didn't notice anything. So, you done yet, or do we need to set up camp here for the night? Everything is in order. The captain bristled slightly, handing the ambassador a sealed scroll. Shinta-san asks that you give this to the grass daimyo. It confirms details about the amount of samurai he will be allowed to bring to the Chunin exams. Well, if that's everything, we'll be going. Naruto's getting antsy. The samurai captain nodded faintly, muttering something about typical ninja, and then waved for the gates to be opened. Turning, he stared at her intently. One of your Anbu captains alerted us to the fact that there are 24 missing nins out there. Really? Where at? Anko asked, her eyes growing cold. They did not provide us with any specifics. The captain answered. I think you should take more samurai. 24 is far too many ninja for just the two of you and a half dozen samurai. Nah, we can handle it. Anko grinned, turning to the ambassador. Well, let's get it in gear. Turning, she stared at Naruto and cupped her hands around her mouth. Hey runt, you've got point, start walking. What? Naruto shouted back. Anko bit back her annoyance. I said walk, you damn moron. Naruto mumbled something and then turning started walking. Anko offered a jaunty wave at the samurai captain and then motioned for the group to follow the blonde. Naruto led the way through the gate, then down the slight hill, past the open ground and across the far bridge. Anko whistled happily from the rear of the group. She could not wait to be back in the thick of battle. That was a joy she missed dearly. High plains, grass country. Naruto glared at the simmering fire, rotating his almost charred fish without thinking. He was perfectly aware that more than a few of the Fire Nation samurai were glaring at him, but he did not care. How many of them had to spend 3 weeks babysitting a child that should have been locked in a cage? Snorting, he yanked his, now completely black, fish out of the fire and glared at it before tossing it away. Screw it all to hell. As far as Naruto was concerned, this mission was a total bust. The only fights he'd had were with Ryo, and according to both Anko and Tashi, they would meet up with the Kusa escort sometime tomorrow. Still, he tried to comfort himself that at least he was out on a mission now. It might have been a total pile of crap, but at least it was a mission, not more training. Propping his chin in his hands, he glowered at the flames, his mind roaming to the fact that this was his first birthday outside of Konoha. Not that it really was different. Outside of Iruka offering a happy birthday bowl of ramen, Naruto had never celebrated or received anything. It had not, however, kept him from hurting bad enough yesterday that he had almost mentioned it to Anko. Thankfully, he had remembered that Anko was the last person that would actually care about his birth. Geez, you look like you've lost your best friend. Anko grinned as she plopped down next to Naruto, picking up a stick to poke the fire. Snorting, the blonde ignored her, unwilling to say anything to her about what he was feeling. Anko was quiet for several long minutes and then continued as if they had always been talking about the fire out off grass conflict. Did you know that the real reason fire and grass had any sort of problems was because of an underwater lake? And I care. Naruto staring at the woman. Whatever, just get Yura to the forest, Anko said, waving a hand, annoyed. We're going to do some extra training while we have the time. More training? Naruto protested, glaring at her. Did I stutter? Anko asked casually, standing up while glaring at him. Believe it or not, Runt, we're a team and I really don't want to have to train someone new. Reaching into the pocket of her coat, she dropped what appeared to be a thick roll of bandages at Naruto's feet. What's that? Naruto asked, not moving to touch the item. He had learned in his month-long training with her that if he was not careful he could fall headfirst into a trap and would suffer horribly for it. Kami knows how many times he had fallen into one of her traps during a sparring session. A forearm holster for your kunai. Anko answered blandly, crossing her arms. I figured you were about ready for one. Scowling, Naruto picked up the item and unrolled it, discovering several thinner than normal kunai. It took some serious consideration on his part, and then Naruto decided that they would probably fall into his hand if he wanted them to. Frowning, he rolled up his sleeve and struggled with the item before looking up at Anko. So how do I use it? Rolling her eyes, Anko turned away from him. Tense your arm for a minute and one will fall into your hand. Thanks, Anko. Naruto said happily after a moment, knowing it was not a birthday present but he could pretend. It was all Naruto really had. Besides, it did show that Anko did care a bit about his safety. Even he could see how useful a forearm holster could be. Mare, that's the only birthday present you'll ever get from me. Anko said dismissively before she started walking toward the forest. Naruto sat there for a moment, a strange feeling stirring in his sea, blinking away the tears of joy from someone, other than Iruka, actually acknowledging his birth before he darted off the log, falling into step beside Anko. Maybe some extra training would not be so bad. Okay, Anko chirped happily, standing in front of a decent-sized pond. Seeing she had Naruto's attention, she continued. Since Ambassador Tashi insisted on a stop for the day, I decided we're still going to train. This time we're doing something different, so training's going to be really fun today. Naruto groaned, prompting Anko to smile brightly. We'll be working on chakra control. Anko continued, leaping into the air with a twisting back flip before landing in a graceful crouch in the center of the pond. Since they had already covered tree climbing, Anko saw no reason to put this off. Especially since they had passed through the checkpoint in the Great Wall and entered the grass country not too long ago. Sadly, the only way to get him interested in learning this would be showing off, not that Anko really had a problem with that. Wow, www. Naruto shouted, hands coming up in front of him. Right, now then I want you to walk out here to me. Anko shouted, sweeping her hand out in front of her. Walk on water? Naruto questioned loudly before scowling at her. Lucky for him, Anko was not like her sensei, otherwise Naruto would have been as of now. Just concentrate your chakra under your feet, that's all it takes. Just expel a constant amount and you'll be fine. Naruto scratched the back of his head, scowling. Anko saw the way he was staring at her through half-closed eyes and groaned. She knew that face, it was his. I'm thinking cause I'm confused but I'm not telling you, look. Anko frowned, even going so far as to tap her foot on the water. He now had yet another mark in her, going to K while sleeping, column. He seemed to notice her impatience and snorted, thumbing his nose. Piece of cake. That said, he took off on a run. Sadly, he managed 4 steps before he sunk all the way up to his N. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. Anko taunted. Screw you. Naruto shouted angrily before struggling his way back to shore, pulling his jacket off angrily and tossing it aside. Scowling, he closed his eyes, hands coming up as he concentrated. Then without warning he opened his eyes and tried running yet again. Cursing loudly, Naruto splashed face first into the pond, displacing a few fish. Pushing and spluttering his way upright, he glared at Anko before returning to shore. Anko shook her head, rubbing her temples. This was going to be a long day. Taking a breath, he attempted to banish everything to concentrate on what he had to do. First he had to mold his chakra. Yet again, he was beginning to doubt just how much chakra he could possibly have. Still, he had to mold it first, and like in the academy it did so sluggishly. Then it sped up, flowing more fluidly like it was supposed to. Satisfied with that, he took a deeper breath, taking a moment to enjoy the way the tufts of his hair danced with the breeze and the sun warmed his en. As calm as he could be, Naruto turned back to his chakra, concentrating it on his feet, and took an uncertain step, easing his weight onto the water. When it seemed he was not about to sink, he brought his other foot forward only to fall face first into the pond water. Sputtering, he pushed his way upright and ranted, while a fish thrashed in his hair before escaping. Frustrated beyond belief, Naruto summed up his feelings in one word. Damn. Give it a rest, Naruto. Anko called, not looking up from her spot near a tree where she was busy arranging odd-looking items. Besides, I need to see you for a minute. Grumbling, Naruto trudged out of the water and dripping wet stomped his way to her side, where she motioned for him to sit down without looking up. Scowling, he swept his gaze over the items she had: 2 kunai, 2 vials of dark ink, which she was mixing up, and 2 odd-looking crystals. Looking up at her, he frowned. What's going on? Anko didn't respond for a moment, then set her ink down and selected a kunai, handing it to him. I need some of your prick your thumb or something. Okay, Naruto said slowly, not really knowing what was going on with her, but having learned it was best not to question her. Pricking his thumb, he winced and offered it to her. Instead, she took the kunai and dipped it into the second vial of ink. Naruto blinked, then started sucking on his thumb, annoyance bubbling up inside him. What the hell was going on? Why exactly did she need his He did, however, watch in fascination as she finally picked up one of the brushes and, dipping it in the ink, started inking a design into the back of her wrist. This is called the emblem of power, Anko said casually, not looking up from her work of intricate lines. It's part of a binding system used by Anbu and hunter nins. Looking up, she dipped her brush again, her tone serious. It's used primarily for keeping track of team members, so that even if the team fragments and someone runs into a serious problem but are unable to radio for help, the others can know. How does that work? Like, reading each other's minds? No, Anko said, looking back at her wrist and finishing it off. Then, picking up one of the crystals, she inked almost invisible kanji on it before setting it back down and picking up the other vial of ink and a clean brush that held his It functions off emotions. The idea of the jutsu is simply to establish a link that increases the sensitivity of the two bound people to these sort of projected out offensed emotions. Naruto blinked, watching as she inked the other crystal first before motioning for him to turn around. Warily, he shifted around so that she could have access to the back of his en, where she started inking another seal. This one is called the emblem of truth, Anko said casually, taking her sweet time. Now, this binding jutsu does have a few limitations, mostly that the further we are from each other the weaker it gets. Still, it's very handy to have. The crystals resonate with chakra and emotions, so they're like emotional radios. And of course, sometimes those limitations can be advantageous. As you follow a path toward the person you are bound with, the jutsu gets stronger, making it easy to track them, so long as their emotions are not fluctuating too much. Oh, I get it. Naruto lied, turning when Anko finished up with the design on his en. So, you invented this? No, Anko said, scowling faintly as she picked up the 2 kunai. My sensei and Jiraiya-sama did. They were 2 of the Sannin and created quite a few justus that are still used by Anbu and Konoha hunter nins. Why do you say sensei like that? Naruto asked after a moment, watching as she mixed the on the 2 blades. I mean, it sounds like you hate him or something. It's none of your business, Anko said in a clipped tone, her eyes boring into him. All you need to know is my sensei was one of the Sannin, those 3 legendary ninja that were trained personally by the Sandaime Hokage. Wow, so where are they now? Naruto asked excitedly. He hadn't known that the old man had taught legendary ninja. Mostly, though, it was the fact that he was under the tutelage of one of these famous ninjas' own students. Sensei is on a quest, Jiraiya-sama is busy on an extended mission, and Tsunade-sama retired. Anko said briskly, finally applying the mixed B to both crystals before looking up at him. Now, turn your back around so we can finish this binding jutsu and you can get back to your training. Snorting, Naruto did as ordered, shivering when he felt her cool fingers press an even cooler stone against his N where the design had been placed. Kinbaku. At first Naruto felt a slight warmth crawl up his spine, then it grew to uncomfortable heat, then suddenly there was a flash of intense heat and he collapsed forward, eyes crossed in pain. Kinbaku. Anko said once more and Naruto heard a faint grunt of pain. The burning sensation grew to a peak where it felt as if the back of his N was peeling away and then, the burning was replaced for a brief moment by a string of odd emotions and then they were snuffed out just as suddenly as the burning. Puzzled over that, Naruto reached back to touch his throbbing N, expecting to feel burnt F or at least the crystal. Instead all he felt was smooth F, as if nothing had ever happened. Turning he found Anko almost sluggishly pushing herself upright. Hey, are you okay? Naruto asked anxiously, only to receive an odd look from the older woman. What if the jutsu had backfired and her mind was scrambled or something? Her look grew even odder and then her entire face went back to that smug expression she normally wore. I'm fine. You get back to work, you've had enough of a break. Grunt. Naruto bristled at that, then snorting climbed to his feet and stormed back toward the pond, swearing that would be the last time he ever worried for that bee. Turning he prepared an insult but found the woman already cleaning up and standing, not even paying him the slightest bit of attention. Annoyed he turned back to the pond and closed his eyes, molding chakra once more. He would not give up until he walked on this water like that psycho bee Anko had. What had even possessed her to even put him through this? Seconds later he was drenched once more and cursing loudly as he yanked off his shirt, throwing it on top of his jacket. He was not going to give up until he had this mastered. Munching on her dango quietly, Anko watched as the last traces of day disappeared. The stars were quick to appear, attempting to give the world a semi-balance of light. Not that the camp needed it. In the center of the tents was a fire pit where a fire crackled happily. It was almost like an idyllic family outing, except for the fact that there were several highly trained samurai and one of the most sadistic women on the planet on guard duty. Anko smirked, selecting another dango from her cart and scanning the area. There was still no sign of those missing nins. Still, she would not give up on them yet. They were not incredible strong from what she could tell, maybe low chunin level at most, so she was not worried that Naruto could not handle the fight. Speaking of Naruto, she narrowed her eyes, wondering why he was still training. Well, besides the fact that she had told him to keep training. He should have stopped a long time ago, yet the link was resonating with frustration, a sure sign that he was training. Scowling, Anko finished her dango. She had better go check on the runt. Grumbling, she left her comfortable spot in the shadow of a tree, moving silently through the woods until she reached the edge of the pond she'd found early and started the training. Carefully, in case there were enemies about, she parted the branches of the tree in front of her. Frowning, Anko shifted to a better position, struggling to see his face. His eyes almost seemed to glow even as he continued to fall into the water, but his body seemed to be moving sluggishly. By all rights the boy should have collapsed by now due to exhaustion, even with his inhuman stamina. He had been training non-stop for nearly 12 hours, that was insane. Still Anko left him alone, almost willing him to get this technique, because like she had told him earlier he was her teammate. Anko watched, seeing the way he would manage to stumble through the water knee-deep before toppling forward to sink. A curse managed to escape her as she started to save his damn hide, only freeze when his head broke the surface and he uttered a curse of his own. Settling back, she watched as he swam back to shore where he shook his head and hopped on one foot to knock water out of his ear. Turning, Naruto glared at the pond, eyes more determined than ever. Damn it, I'm going to be Hokage someday, I can do this. I'm not going to let a freaking pond stop me. That declared he, concentrated, hands held in position to help the concentration needed to mold the chakra. Anko held her breath. On an instinctive level she knew that this would be his last shot. Either he made it or he passed out and she had to save his worthless A. Lowering his hands, Naruto marched forward, head held high as if he was not even worried. Anko bit her lip, watching as his feet carried him further and further across the water's surface, and then, pride filling her for some reason, she smirked as he came to a stop center. The sheer amount of stamina and chakra he was using was outrageous, impossible, yet there he was and he even appeared to have chakra and stamina left to burn. Naruto looked around smugly, then lifted his arms, voice echoing in the night. Thought I could not do it, did nature, stupid sadistic bee. I'm going to be Hokage and you can't stop me. That shouted, he started dancing stupidly, cheering himself. Anko merely continued to stare at him, a blank look on her face. Not so much because of his dance but more because of the fact that he had the energy to dance. Anybody else, herself included, would have collapsed well before they could even think about dancing. Just what was Naruto? How strong could he become? How powerful? Somewhere, unknown to her, a smaller voice that sounded vaguely like a hissing snake whispered, "How can I use him?" Still, even Naruto could not fight off exhaustion forever as he toppled forward once more, sinking yet again. Anko waited a few minutes to ensure that he was not about to recover, and then she broke cover to retrieve Naruto and keep him in the world of the living. Naruto woke up with a dull throb in his temples. He was not sure why, but he knew that he had one and that the noise around him was not helping. Sitting up, the blonde looked around as the samurai packed up the camp, too, playing with Ryo, who was laughing happily. Groaning, Naruto climbed to his feet, hand resting against one of his temples. "About time you woke up," Anko suddenly said from behind him, and Naruto jerked in surprise. "Geez, why did she always do that?" Turning, he glared up at the smiling Jonin, who was twirling a kunai. "Well, I guess we can start now. Unless your highness would like to sleep a bit more." Naruto glared at her and she smiled, ruffling his hair before turning to speak with a samurai that was nearby. Snorting, the blonde looked at the sky, to see how long he had been sleeping, but found it a flat gray color. Oh, just the perfect way to start a day, under a gray sky and with a throbbing headache. All he needed now was to find out he was on the same damn team with Sasuke after all. "I'd have to K myself if that was true," Naruto muttered as he turned back to his sleeping bag, repacking it. "Naga, Naga, look," Ryo suddenly shouted, drawing Naruto's attention. He watched as the girl darted away from the smiling samurai to grab a sunflower on the edge of the camp. She was smiling brightly, pleased with the discovery. Even Naruto started to smile at that. Then three things happened at once. Anko shouted, "Ambush!" A samurai that was standing beside Naruto was brought down with a kunai to the T, and Naga was unsheathing his sword, racing to save Ryo from the various missing nins that were hurtling toward them. "Move!" Anko shouted, as samurai fanned out in a circle to protect the ambassador. Naruto's eyes darted everywhere. Naga was fighting desperately against a missing nin. Anko was darting everywhere, leaving a B wake behind her with a grin. The samurai next to him was his B pulling around Naruto's feet, those glassy eyes staring unseeing at the heavens. Naruto knew he should do something, to move, to fight, yet he could not do it. His body refused to move. He watched as samurai, who were only just barely able to mold chakra, fought against seemingly unbeatable ninja. He saw samurai's horrible, painful deaths at the hands of ninja and jutsu. Ryo was screaming as Naga collapsed to his knees, B spraying from his T. The B kept pulling, expanding until Naruto's foot was slick with the liquid. He felt sick, he wanted to run away. Then something inside Naruto stirred. It was not like during his fight with Sasuke or sparring Anko. It was almost as if something inside him was dancing. He felt his B starting to burn with a desire to draw B too. Naruto saw Naga clutch futile at his M clothes, and Ryo screamed as she tried to crawl away from the towering ninja that had K, her only source of protection. Suddenly everything that had frozen him in place was gone. Scattered like leaves during a whirlwind. Naruto reacted without thinking, darting forward as the missing nin started flashing through seals for a jutsu. Naruto's hand shot to his leg holster before sending several kunai flying almost flawlessly. Naruto was seconds behind the weapons, eyes narrowed and instincts guiding him. The missing nin cursed as he leapt out of the path of the weapons, turning to stare at Naruto. Naruto stared at those gray eyes, even as things starting slowing down. A part of him shouted that he was going to while another part, the part that had taken control, screamed wordlessly in anticipation of the fight. Cage Bunshin. Seconds later, Naruto was surrounded by 4 clones. 2 ducked the missing nin's initial attack to grab Ryo and fled toward the ambassador. The other 2 disappeared in a flash of smoke, but they had bought Naruto enough time to close the minor gap, bringing him into striking distance. The missing nin took a swipe at the boy's head with a kunai, but Naruto ducked, coming up thrusting his own kunai for the man's stomach. Instinct was all Naruto had right now and he was running with it. This bastard was going to try and hurt Ryo after all, and Naruto could not let that happen. The missing nin reacted instantly, taking a half step back while performing a passing block, forcing Naruto's weapon into the earth. Naruto adapted to the sudden change smoothly, using his momentum to whip around into a single-handed handstand, catching the missing nin's hand that was holding a kunai aimed at Naruto's en. There was a half second of non-movement, then Naruto was delivering an inverted front kick to the man's elbow. The missing nin yanked his arm away, clutching at the now broke joint as Naruto completed his flip, pulling his kunai free. Spinning, Naruto's moment of joy at his great move was brought to an abrupt halt when the missing nin attacked with his other arm viciously. Naruto managed to move to the side just as the kunai came within inches of his cheek. Gulping, Naruto tried to recover but was forced to dodge yet again, with a handspring just barely avoiding the at his C. This was bad, he could not dodge for much longer. This was proven a moment later when the missing nin's kunai through the sleeve of Naruto jumpsuit his shoulder. Clutching his arm, he tumbled to the ground, but thankfully his training paid off and he rolled in a desperate attempt to put some space between them. Damn it! Skidding to a stop, Naruto looked around, eyes going wide, realizing that the missing nin was already within a half step of him. Heaving, he moved his body, forcing himself into a half crouch, only to be pitched forward and pelted by debris as an flash note that had escaped his weapon's pouch went off. Recovering quickly, Naruto instinctively turned to face his enemy while blocking out the pain of his shoulder. The missing nin was crouched, hand over his eyes as if shielding them. Once more following his instincts, Naruto charged his enemy empty-handed. The missing nin apparently heard his rush and made a blind lunge at Naruto's C, but the blonde jumped like he had been taught, flipping over the man as he twisted around in the air. What followed next was slow, almost dream-like. Naruto saw the opening and his hand moved of its own accord, allowing a kunai from his forearm holster to fall perfectly into his hand. The moment it left his fingers, Naruto no longer saw an enemy or a human. All Naruto saw was a training dummy. Then time sped back up and he was full force into the ground, while his enemy collapsed face first. For a moment Naruto felt pride that he had hit the target, that he had preformed so perfectly. It did not register for several long minutes that he was on a mission and that was a real human he had just K. His mind refused to accept the facts until he could no longer ignore the end that had splattered his face from the blow. Numbness spread through him and then, tears. Anko ducked the first wild catching it on her way back to a standing position. For a moment she stared into the widening eyes of the missing ninja she was fighting, and then she was molding her chakra. Senator Harshu. Seconds later Anko grimaced as snakes exploded from the sleeve of her jacket, twisting as they plunged through the air to sink their venomous fangs into the unsuspecting ninja. She watched briefly as his mouth foamed and then released his arm, the snakes recoiling back into her wrist. Noticing that she was being avoided for the moment, she took the chance to study the battlefield. She had not expected an ambush here. Stupid. She should have seen it coming, should have felt the morons moving into position. At least the samurai were talented enough with chakra that they could stall the attacking ninja. Ducking a sloppy attack, Anko plunged a kunai through the missing nin's ribs and into his heart. Shoving him away, Anko spun, realizing that she could not see or feel Naruto at all. Where was that brat? Earlier in the fight she had seen him frozen, but he had been alive. Now she could not feel anything, yet he had not. If he had, Anko would have felt that. She had taken only a few dozen steps when another missing nin charged her. Anko reacted easily using his weight and momentum. Twisting as he passed, she plunged a kunai into his spine, severing his motor function but leaving him alive. In extreme pain, but alive. Turning, she started forward once more only to stop in her tracks, seeing Naruto duck a swing from the missing nin, then rise thrusting a kunai toward the man's stomach. Earth release, Earth shall return. Anko reacted to the shout, leaping back in time to see the ground she had been standing on churn before turning into a wall of stone. Landing once more, she narrowed her eyes, watching as the missing nin responsible exploded from behind the wall. Strange. Anko scowled as the man made a lunge toward her, dodging and twisting around his blows. Her mind raced, paying attention to the various jutsus she had heard so far. Dodging yet another earth jutsu, she landed, her scowl in full force. The stone did not allow ninja to go missing. This many missing nins using stone jutsus just did not make any sense. You are a quick one, the man said, eyes narrowing even as his hands started flashing through a series of seals. Anko smiled viciously, molding her chakra and lashing out with a punch, Senator Harshu. Seconds later she watched as the man, obviously at least low jonin, lost his concentration as several snakes wrapped around them with bone-crushing power. Turning her gaze away as the snakes finished their work, she tried to find Naruto again, cursing that she had lost track of the fight. Moving quickly she jumped up, using the stone wall as a perch to locate the fight she was interested in, which she found just as a flash note went off. Cursing she squinted through the dots in front of her eyes, her breath stopping as Naruto twisted around for a head-on charge. Would he? Anko felt her eyes widened as she saw Naruto, at 12, make one of the most beautiful K she had ever seen. The blinded missing nin made a lunge for his C but Naruto had jumped, twisting in the air. Anko could almost read his mind as his eyes fixated on the back of the man's N. She bit her lip watching as his hand came forward, his forearm holster supplying the kunai required. After that it was nothing more than a flash of dark metal slipping perfectly from his hand and into the base of the man's skull. Anko saw a vague, satisfied smile on Naruto's face before he crashed to the earth, his enemy toppling forward from the momentum. It was all over. Seconds stretched out in silence and Anko shifted her attention briefly to the ambassador, noting that most of the samurai were wounded in some way. Thankfully the missing nins were retreating, which meant she could turn her attention back to Naruto. Naruto had yet to move and his emotions were not registering. No, they were starting to come through now. He felt guilty. Scowling, Anko hopped off the wall and stepping over the bee of various samurai and ninja made her way to Naruto. Curious, she paused next to the ninja that Naruto had taken down. Kneeling, she studied his body, fingers prodding his shoulders and back. About the same strength as Sasuke. Grinning in satisfaction, she plucked the kunai from the man's skull and stood walking over to kneel next to Naruto. He was spread eagle on the ground, blue eyes staring at the sky as he cried, the type of crying that only those who were too innocent for life as a ninja. It was a silent cry, the type that's often followed first K. Staring at him, she remembered. K them Anko, my sweet lil viper. A shadowy man, with yellow eyes whispered to her before glancing at her two happily chatting teammates. Hi, Oro-sensei. Shaking that memory off, she reached down, gently wiping Naruto's cheek clear of tears. Her stomach was twisting itself into a knot, but she could not place a finger on why. Aye. Naruto hiccuped, his eyes drifting to stare at her. Anko nodded, giving him a reassuring smile. It was beautiful. Then reaching down, she pressed the kunai into his hand. This is yours. She hesitated, feeling as if she had heard those things somewhere before. Anko quickly shrugged that off, noticing his shoulder. The wound was deep, but it seemed to be healing on its own. Raising an eyebrow, she produced a bandage and covered the wound, not bothering with the medical cream. Odd. She knew he recovered quickly, but this was faster than she had ever seen. IK him. Naruto whispered hoarsely, breaking her train of thought. Turning her attention back to him, she found him staring at her, as if waiting for her judgment. Anko nodded, glancing back at him with a proud smile. Quote. I'll buy you ramen when we get to the hidden grass. Standing, she moved off to check on the others, granting him a moment to recover from the shock of his first K. Then suddenly she realized with a horrible jolt that everything she had just said and done had been said to her. Her hand went up to her N, covering a blank space where she remembered being bitten once. She was not her sensei. She was not. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.